We have been in Hebrews 12 several weeks. We have been in Hebrews 12 for 7 weeks.
It's okay.
Several weeks. So we're not going to go back over a lot of stuff. The key phrase for us has been a new and living way. Basically saying that the writer of Hebrews, who I think is Paul, but there's people disagree about that. The writer of Hebrews was doing a very challenging thing, trying to lead the Jewish people from the Jewish religion and everything that they understood, bringing them to Christ and helping them understand that there was a new and living way. And the whole book, when you read it from that perspective, that he's trying to help the Jewish people transition. That's what I see at the heart of the book of Hebrews. And by the time we get to chapter 12, you have to excuse me because I'm thinking of St. Francis of Assisi. What's coming out of my mouth is over here, but what's in my brain? I'm thinking of St. Francis, the position that he took during his generation, where he was looked at as a bit of a nutcase because of the way he kind of saw what God wanted to do, the experience he had, and stuff like that. And now we look back and there's a whole Franciscan order and everything else. And we say, oh my goodness, the brother was on top of it. But in his own generation, they didn't recognize that. It's a similar kind of thing where Paul was trying to lead his brothers into this new and living way, but it's really, really hard. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with it, but I see the same things today that they faced 2,000 years ago, which is that wanting to revert back to the old ways, when it was quite clear that Jesus brought us into a new way. Behold, all things have become new. So we've been in Hebrews 12. By the time we get to Hebrews 12, there's a whole bunch of stuff listed there. We could spend months going through it. I don't really want to do that. What I'm hoping is that we have been able to pick up a few points here and there along the way. We spent a couple weeks on understanding the spiritual nature of Zion when he says you haven't come to Mount Sinai, with Moses and the Ten Commandments and that whole scene with the fire. You haven't come to that. You've come to Mount Zion. And he wasn't talking about a physical place, though Zion's a physical place. Jerusalem's built on it. But that's not what he was referring to. He was talking, we've gone from an old, natural, external system and way to a new, living, internal system and way. And Zion has spiritual implications to it, and that's what we've been looking at. And we're moving on from that 21st verse, I think it is, to the 22nd. Anyway, if somebody would read the 22nd verse of Hebrews 12, there's 4 things in there that we're going to touch on tonight.
Hebrews 12:22.
Hebrews 12, verse 22, yeah.
But ye are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels.
So, we spent a couple weeks on Zion, and then he goes on to describe the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. He's talking about different things there. As you read verses 22 through 24, which we're not going to do tonight, you'll see that he keeps saying things like, you've come to Zion, you've come to a city, you've come to angels, you've come to the church of the firstborn, the general assembly. We're coming to something. There's just way too much there. But tonight we're just going to take our 4 points from that 22nd verse: the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, innumerable company of angels, a myriad of angels. It's an expression that's used that just means there's more than you can count. There's thousands of 10,000s kind of thing. It's just an expression, a lot. 4 points. The first point is the city. Now, I just want to throw it out. Whatever comes to mind, I'm not talking about the passage now even necessarily, just the difference between a city, urban living, you hear gunshots, between the city, urban living, and the country, rural living. What kinds of things, what kind of differences come to mind between the two?
Stars.
Stars?
Yeah, you can see stars in the sky because there aren't as many streetlights.
And so in the country, you can see stars in the sky.
Open space.
Open
More
space.
There's more open space in the country.
The air, the quality.
The quality of air is better in the city. Right next to Kodak, yeah.
Cities are usually the seat of government. It's usually
Okay.
where the quote unquote power resides. But the rural areas where the sustenance resides, so there's always a struggle between the abundance of the land versus the need of the city and the power to co-opt it.
Mhm.
So is that-
Might be difficult to access certain needs in the country,
Mm-hmm.
like marketplaces, like right there in the urban area.
Culture. City has, the cultural seat, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
In our case, RPO and that sort of thing, are in the city.
Country's quieter.
I kind of think of where in the country, your needs, you have your needs met, but a lot of times when you get into going to the city, you're going for your wants. You know, the marketplace is stuff from all over, but they're really, I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say in the country, because you generally grow your own food, take care of your own cattle,
Exactly.
that you
All my
meet,
needs, yeah.
you meet your own needs. Where in
Right, I
in
mean-
a city, this type of commerce is there's an exchange that goes on,
There's a dependence.
a dependency
And
that
I
without
go-
each other.
I go from the country, when I go to the city, I'm looking for things I want. Not so much the things I may need.
Well, in the
Yes, ma'am.
in the country, there's dependence on your neighbors
Mm-hmm.
and each other that way, maybe, like during harvesting time, or if a piece of your machinery breaks down, or
Maybe, like you said, maybe.
maybe.
It's kind of interesting when we think about this thing that we're talking about with Zion, since we've come to a city. So I wonder, let's take it to a different level. We've mentioned a lot of really good things and things that make sense, and we all have experienced and we know. But what do you think might be the spiritual implications of coming to a city? Because this is, God speaking to us and saying, brought you to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, not the country of the living God, not the farm of the living God, to a city. So what are some spiritual implications, do you think, of city, country, if you would, if we can think like that for a minute?
Well, city takes many different kinds of people to function.
There's a lot of different people in the city.
It's more energy.
There's a lot of energy in the city. Think of spiritual implications now. Think spiritual implications of what those two things that have just been said. And the old and the new. Because remember, he's talking about Sinai when they were in the wilderness. And you haven't come to that. You're not out in the wilderness anymore. You're not living a tribal, exclusive mentality anymore. There's a lot of people and a lot of energy. Spiritual implications of the city. It's not exclusive anymore. It's inclusive. It better be. It has to be. Talking about spiritual implications now of the city, of the living God, the city itself. In the previous chapter, and the 11th chapter, if somebody wants to go to Hebrews, the 11th chapter, just go back one chapter and read about Abraham in verses 8 through 10, and then verses 13 through 16.
By faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed by going out to a place which he was to receive for an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. To where did he go?
8 through 10 and 13 through 16.
By faith, he lived as an alien in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, fellow heirs of the same promise. For he was looking for the city which has foundations, whose architect, and builder is God.
Okay, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them.
So this isn't a new thought in Hebrews 12. Back in Hebrews 11, it was being talked about, that Abraham was looking forward to the city. In fact, all the people of God that had died in faith hadn't received the promise, and they were looking forward to the city. They were looking for that city. Somehow in God's economy, it was the city. Now, we're not thinking in terms of the natural physical city now of Rochester. We're talking about a spiritual city that incorporates energy, that incorporates diversity. It's a different thing. Now, if you're a Jew, you're not looking for diversity, quite frankly. If you find it, you want to make it Jewish right away. Okay? I'm not trying to be rude about it, but that's the way it goes. And now, the reason why I say we're still struggling with this same kind of thing 2,000 years later is because we can even sit in a meeting like this and immediately think in terms of us and them, okay, Christians, non-Christians, and if they're not a Christian, we want them to be a Christian. So change that much? What I'm saying is that this city, we're going to read more about the city, but this city is a community. One of the things during the time of 2,000 years ago, a city had walls. It's prophesied in Isaiah and again in Zechariah that God's city does not have walls. It's a city without walls. And in Zechariah it tells us why. In Zechariah it says because of the inhabitants and the amount of livestock that's there. In other words, you can't contain it because it keeps multiplying. There's blessing there. The city is a place of blessing. It continues to grow and grow. That's what's happening. In our prayers tonight, we're praying about terrorists. That our heart's desire is that a relationship is somehow developed with God so the city grows. Now, I don't know why we're praying that if we don't believe that it's possible and it's God's heart that He wants every one of His children, doesn't matter what they are, quite frankly, to be in a relationship with Him for the growth of this city, the city of diversity, the city of energy. And as it grows, think about it. If you have walls around a city that can hold 1 million people and all of a sudden it needs to hold 2 million, what are you going to do? You can't have, you better tear down the walls because you won't be able to contain them. You won't be able to live together. It's a city without walls. God is our walls. In Isaiah, he says that salvation is our walls and our gates are praise. That's a spiritual city. If our walls are anything, it's the arms of Christ around us. It's our salvation. That's our city. It's a community of believers. Now you can go to Acts 2 and people do all the time and they say, so that's our model. You know, when you read about how they broke bread daily, they went to each other's homes and, you know, the apostles' teaching. And they're beautiful passages of Scripture early in Acts. But no, I wouldn't say that that's the model. What I would say about the city, remember, once Pentecost came, they all stayed in the city, Jerusalem. They stayed in the city because they were the city, quite frankly. It wasn't a matter of them staying in a city. They were the city. These guys recognized that we're the city. We're the city that God is building and raising up. A community of believers. But it's not so much, where I'm coming from, is not so much what you read in the book of Acts. It's what they kind of practiced, where no matter who you were, no matter who you were, no matter who, if you had a need, they did what they could to share what they had for each other. I mean, think of it. The day of Pentecost comes. You got all these people from all over the place are in Jerusalem for Pentecost. The Holy Spirit comes in an unusual, magnificent way, and these people don't go back home. What do you do with thousands of people that came thinking they were going to have a party and then never went home? They just left all their lands. They left everything behind. Boom, we're together. Well, I've got a job. I make $40 a week. I could probably take a couple people in. In other words, there was a response to each other, a spiritual response to each other's physical needs. And it took place there in the city. There was a care for one another. See, to me, the thing about Acts 2 was that they shared with each other.